Good morning. Welcome everybody to the breakfast series brought to you by BioMar Chile and Corbion. We are proud to provide you with 2 sessions of interesting conversations with great speakers who will tell us about the latest food and seafood trends in the US, new sales channels, and changing consumer behavior. I hope this will be an exciting collaborative space for all of us and where future innovations may emerge together with our clients and for consumers. Many thanks to our speakers for their participations and to our moderators today and tomorrow, Catherine Breyer from BioMar and Jill Kaufman from Corbion. We hope you are settled in with a coffee and enjoy the first day of the breakfast series. Thanks.
Welcome everybody. Thank you, Eduardo. Welcome to the breakfast series, 2 days where we will be showcasing you trends that are happening within the US consumer market. My name is Catherine Breyer. I'll be your host today. I am heading up global marketing and branding for BioMar. Today we have a great lineup of guests. We have Arlin Wasserman, founder and partner from Changing Taste. He'll be coming to us live from Massachusetts. We also have Linda Cornish, president of Seafood Nutrition Partnership. She'll be coming in from Arlington, Virginia. We also have Jim Griffin, director of the Chilean Salmon Marketing Council. He'll be coming in from Boston. And also Sebastian Goycoolea, CEO of BluGlacier. He's in Miami, Florida today. Just a few notes before we get started on today. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see 3 red dots. If you click those to open or close the chat section, throughout today, we will be sending you through some notes and links. You'll be able to find that in the chat section. You'll also be able to send us questions that we will hopefully get to at the end of the presentation. We're already running a little bit late, sorry for that. But today's format will be 4 presentations from each of our key presenters, followed by some set questions and hopefully time to answer your questions. So without further ado, I'll introduce to you Arlin Wasserman. Arlin, are you with us?
I am.
Hi, Arlin.
Hi.
Arlin is a founder and partner at Changing Taste, where he has been for over 20 years. Changing Taste is a consultancy firm operating across the food value chain, supporting supply and product development to market analysis and strategy. Their key focus area is providing strategic advice and support in the areas of market development, culinary and food product and sustainability. Arlin and Changing Taste clients have included Compass Group, General Mills, Seafood Watch, National Research Association, the World Bank, and MSC, just to name a few. We're going to send you a little bit of a link on how you can get to know more about Changing Taste. You'll find that in your chat section. Arlin himself holds a master's degree in natural resource science and public health, and has previously held sustainability roles for many organizations. Arlin has also been an advisor to both the US Department of Agriculture and the European Union of Parliament. He is also a past recipient of the Food and Society Policy Fellowship awarded by the Kellogg Foundation. Please welcome Arlin, and I'll hand over the presentation to him now.
Thanks so much for the kind introduction. With all of that, what we really have been doing for more than a decade and a half now is studying and changing how protein is chosen and eaten, particularly in North America. And we do that a lot, despite all the big words, by thinking about proteins principally as food. And we mean not just land-based proteins, not just sea-based proteins, but how we shift among all those proteins to achieve a more delicious and sustainable future. There's great news for Chilean salmon in the U.S. We've been studying what Americans want to eat in the coming year, and yet again, about 1/5 of Americans want to eat less beef. That's been constant now for almost 3 years. What's new in the past few months is that for the first time ever, the top choice for how to eat less beef is to replace meat in our meals with fish or seafood. That for the first time was a better choice than just eating less meat. And we've also seen a substantial decline in trying to replace meat or really anything else with plant-based alternatives. Among the choices we have and the choices we make in the United States, salmon is the most popular fish choice. And when we analyzed the top 20 choices and where they were appearing for offer or for menus, salmon was the only top choice, not just the only fin fish, but the only fish and seafood choice that continued to increase in popularity, and we see that continuing over the next 4 years. What has changed and might not be as well recognized, especially during the time in COVID, is that how Americans cook has changed. We've really moved into two ends of a spectrum. One is we still love our fried fish and seafood, even more than we've been favoring baked and grilled. But the other choice that's emerging is fish and seafood that can be unpackaged and placed directly on the plate. That's true not just at home, but in food service hospitality, and I'll talk about that in a moment or two. What has been a block, though, to dramatically increasing fish and seafood consumption has been Americans' increasing awareness and concern about ocean health issues. While mercury's been a mainstay, things like plastic contamination, radiation, slave labor, and antibiotic use are all rapidly increasing in awareness and are all reasons now why Americans say, perhaps I will not choose fish and seafood today. That's more than overfishing or impacts of aquaculture, which are declining as concerns. So we see a new wisdom emerging. While it used to be the thought was Americans think wild fish is the best and healthy choice, the new wisdom we see, especially among Americans in their mid-50s and younger, and especially among women and also people concerned about eating for good health, is that ocean health and our health are connected through fish and seafood. And with the state of the ocean health as it's described in the U.S. today, that is preventing us from dramatically increasing overall fish and seafood consumption. 93% of Americans eat fish in the last week, half do so for health reasons, but concerningly, only 17% now think fish and seafood is a safer choice than other proteins like beef, pork, and poultry. One of the reasons is a lesson that we learned from chicken, and we've worked over a decade to help the poultry industry address the issue of antibiotic use. The short answer here, and glad to talk to any of you further, is that reducing antibiotics and claiming progress in antibiotic reduction has not been nearly as valuable in the marketplace as eliminating use, which once eliminated dramatically increased purchase and consumption of chicken in the U.S. Having less antibiotics in the minds of many U.S. consumers is like fish being just a little bit old. It's a black and white call for the American consumer. We also want to take a moment to look at COVID-19 implications for our market. And very briefly, COVID-19 has reset and accelerated quite a bit. The biggest way to think about this is about changes in how often people go to different channels to eat. Because of COVID responses, the year-over-year change in seated restaurant diners has been significant. Through the end of the summer, it was down 40%. With COVID continuing in the U.S. and winter coming, that number is going to decline further, not continue to increase. The dramatic decline in the number of diners eating at a restaurant seated there means that independent restaurants, which are the ones most likely to serve fish and seafood, are likely to close for a long time and perhaps permanently. We know that about 1 in 5 will not reopen. Our forecast is that as much as 2 out of 3 will change hands or formats. So that leaves quick serve as one of the more robust channels, along with corporate chains that can quickly move to takeout. Both of those speak to different kind of products that hold well over time and at lower temperatures, like cured and chilled, which we'll talk about in a minute. Meanwhile, grocery retail foot traffic also has declined. We hear a lot about dramatically increasing grocery retail sales, but people are going to the grocery store only about a third as often as they used to, about once a week, rather than just under 3 times a week. So that means the opportunity to buy fresh fish and seafood has been reduced, because when people purchase fresh fish and seafood today, especially unbranded and unpackaged from a case, they intend to eat it in the next day or 2, and they don't think to hold it in the refrigerator for perhaps 6 to 10 days until their next trip. So when we look at that, the great news is that salmon still remains the most popular fish. In fact, COVID has narrowed selections and eliminated the competition. It's harder to try something new because of the decline of restaurant dining. Grocery retailers are looking to make sure cases are full. In fact, we know the last couple weeks, after a few hard months, has been really great for Chilean salmon imports, which are now displacing European imports due to the lack of daily flights capacity. Declining sales in food service overall for fish and seafood are not offset by the more modest increases by volume in grocery retail. And this has hit fresh fish hardest because of reduced shopping frequency. We know that the shift to frozen fish in the American consumer's mind is also a commitment to lower prices paid for the same species. But most importantly, COVID has accelerated changes in how we cook and serve fish. Within that, Chilean salmon, where the salmon is farmed and how it is farmed is not differentiated. The antibiotic issue may only be a negative. But we see that the fish itself coming from Chile can be dramatically differentiated in the market to drive greater sales, especially as we eat more at home and buy fish less frequently. And I was just part of another event, Chile Connected, where fruit and vegetable, mostly fruit producers, were focused on exports to the U.S., displacing other countries where supply chains have been disrupted, and focusing on Chilean culinary applications that can translate to the American market. And we think this is the way to differentiate Chilean salmon in the marketplace as well. Today, smoked, cured, and chilled fits with new tastes, and it was already growing in popularity before COVID. We know there are incredible traditions of smoking fish, of serving cured fish in Chile, and we know that translating this into, if you will, seacutery, or the charcuterie culinary applications that allow fish to be served as chilled, refrigerated, and sold as chilled, refrigerated, and fresh, while lasting for a week or more and having unique flavors from Chile, all are a bullseye for where the American consumer will be in the year, and we think 2 or 3 years ahead, as COVID response continues and then the market reshapes itself. And we're glad to talk to you about that more. And thank you for your time this morning. Catherine?
Thank you, Arlin, for that presentation. We can dive in a little bit later. We've just had a request if people can slow down a little bit when they're talking. And we have a broad audience out there who may not have English as their first language. But moving forward onto that, I'd like to introduce you to Linda Cornish, President of Seafood Nutrition Partnership. The Seafood Nutrition Partnership builds awareness on the health and nutritional benefits of seafood to Americans to help increase their consumption. They also are very focused on getting the omega-3 levels up to at least the daily recommended guidelines. Her team has been responsible for the Eat Seafood America campaign launched across the US. I'll hand it over to you, Linda.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be with you today. And, for Seafood Nutrition Partnership, we are a national nonprofit here in the U.S., and our focus has been to reach consumers through campaigns to help them increase their consumption of seafood. And so for me, I'd like to present to you that there are many new opportunities for seafood consumption in the U.S. During COVID-19, it's presented some new opportunities for seafood. A quarantine surprise that was reported in the New York Times in May was that Americans were cooking more seafood. And what's been happening is that during this time, we have experienced approximately 3 years of consumer behavior change in 3 months. And so when the U.S. went into quarantine starting in March, along with restaurant closures, Americans were cooking more at home. And also during this time, the U.S. retail was experiencing some meat shortages. But also at this time, seafood has some good availability. And so that presented just, I think, a reason why Americans were cooking more seafood at home. Another reason could be that consumers, as we found out in this National Restaurant News article that shared a Data Essential research, was that Americans miss seafood. They miss seafood the most after Mexican food. And, that began to motivate them to find new ways to create seafood dishes at home. And an additional support in terms of why Americans were cooking more seafood, they were looking at it as a great protein option. And during this time, IRI, a great research firm, showed in their Consumer Product Goods Demand Index that since April, seafood has had the strongest demand growth of all fresh categories. And it has had a year-over-year growth of anywhere from 20 to sometimes up to 50% during this time. And so during this time, we are looking at the different priorities for consumers, what's important to them at this time. They are focused on their health, being a conscious consumer, and also supporting local businesses. And this is per some data that Accenture conducted that they surveyed on a global basis of over 3,000 participants. And so right now, consumers in the US as well as globally are concerned about their health, staying healthy, with an extra emphasis on immune support and also food safety. And also for conscious consumers, they are now more mindful about what they're buying. They are striving to limit their food waste and also to make sure that they're shopping more cost consciously. And also definitely to buy more sustainable options, because there is that connection with what's good for their health is also important with what's good for the planet. Lastly, consumers, because we are all under quarantine, are more aware of supporting local businesses. They want to support the community and shop at their local stores. 80% of consumers feel more connected to their communities more than ever before. So with that background, seafood is meeting consumer needs. And, seafood has vitamin D, zinc, selenium, which are key nutrients for antiviral immunity. And these are all rich in seafood. A National Institute of Health and AARP diet and health study, which looked at 420,000 people who eat seafood, saw that they reduced their risk for respiratory death by 20%. Now, a healthy immune system will not stop a person from getting COVID-19. Proper hand washing and social distancing are needed as well. But a stronger immune system will give a person a better chance to fight against the effects of the virus. And so also there's good news coming out of the U.S. for seafood as well. Right now, the U.S. is developing its next dietary guidelines for Americans. The foundation of that is the 2020 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee's scientific report. And in that report, the scientists share that moms and kids need to eat more seafood. Moms should be eating seafood before, during, and after pregnancy. and also offer seafood beginning at the age of 6 months and up for kids. For the first time, the dietary guidelines in the U.S. are preparing dietary recommendations for kids 0 to 24 months. And so that's important in terms of messaging to make sure that kids are eating seafood more often. And so Catherine had mentioned that we are conducting the Eat Seafood America campaign. During this time, we saw that the industry needed more boost from the consumer demand to really help build up that demand as much as possible. So we created the Eat Seafood America campaign. You can find all the information at eatseafoodamerica.com. This was launched in April of this year and continues to be conducted through next year. And so this message is to encourage all Americans to support the U.S. seafood community by eating more seafood, buying it more often, to keep themselves healthy and to save jobs. And so with this, we received some funding support from the Walton Family Foundation, the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, NOAA Fisheries, and the Chilean Marketing Council, Chilean Salmon Marketing Council, for their support to help us make this campaign as wide as possible. And so these are some of the campaign assets that are free to use, and they really are sharing the different messages that we want Americans to eat seafood. It helps to support the immune health, and also omega-3s helps to reduce stress. And during this time with fall coming in, that seafood is also a comforting food. And we show different images of salmon, ways to cook salmon, and there are a number of recipes, videos on the website as well for people to be able to include more seafood and salmon into their diets. And so the results to date since April 2020 for this campaign are that there have been over 300 million impressions, and we track that by using the hashtag #EatSeafoodAmerica. And so if you add that to your social posts, you will also show up on this campaign. What we have found is that consumers that have, based on some surveys, consumers that saw this campaign were 3 times more likely to have added seafood to their meals during this time versus consumers that did not see the campaign. 12% plan to add seafood to their meals soon. 22% are learning how to cook seafood more at home, and 23% have been eating seafood more the last 2 months. And so for more information, I encourage you to go to eatseafoodamerica.com to join us and help continue to encourage Americans to eat seafood more during this time for their health and for the health of the economy and also the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. Very interesting presentation, and it's great to see seafood consumption going up and sales going up. So that's very encouraging for our industry. Okay, I'd like now to introduce a man who really needs no introduction down in Chile is Jim Griffin, Director of the Chilean Salmon Marketing Council. Jim has been consulting and teaching in the food and beverage and manufacturing sectors for several decades. He helped create Salmon Chile and created the core principles for continuous improvement for the Chilean salmon market. His team is behind the Promise of Patagonia, a very nice campaign that I enjoyed very much, launched in key markets including the US. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Hola a todos. Hola a todos to my friends in Chile. Buenos dias. I'll stick to English so I don't embarrass myself. But nice to see you all. This morning, some of you have not met the council directly, so I want to explain a bit about our mission. Our mission is to increase salmon consumption in the United States and position Chile as the preferred choice for the American consumer. And we've been working now for 2 years as a group of 10 companies in Chile with this in mind. We're very proud of the progress we've made. We see here in the US changing perception for Chilean salmon, and we are on our way as the first ever independent national marketing campaign to achieving our goal to position Chile for the future. Part of what we do is we try to create awareness of Chilean salmon so that we move from being a commodity to a brand, to something that consumers are aware of and that they pursue. To do that, we try to build connectivity with consumers and with retailers, and our focus is on building trust. When we achieve trust, the consumer and the retailer will consider us as an option, and it opens doors for us in terms of business performance. Over time, if you have built trust, of course, it allows us to foster preference, which will grow demand. And a lot of folks refer to that in the business world as conversion, where once trust is in place and preference is built, we convert individuals into being consumers of our product. So to that end, I want to share some information with you. The data that I have on the screen, some of you have seen before, and this is from Contali. We also use data from Salmon in Chile. And I want to show you some interesting facts. From the period of 2009 to 2014, per capita consumption of salmon in the United States was moderate. It was moderate, it was growing slowly. We didn't see the growth that we had hoped for. But since 2014, we have seen, let me go back. We have seen growth of 37% in salmon consumption. The United States has become a power consumer of salmon, and in recent years, we're fast approaching the equivalent level of consumption that we've seen in Europe for years. Now, I've been in the seafood business for 30 years, and I've never seen such rapid growth for a specific species in my career. So we are quickly approaching around 75% of the per capita consumption of salmon in the United States that we see in Europe. If this trajectory continues, in coming years, we may very well see the United States equal Europe in per capita salmon consumption. So that's very good news for the Chilean Salmon Marketing Council. It's very good news for the US consumer in terms of health and changing diets. And it gives me great hope that in the future, we'll see our objectives as a council met. As you've heard already, we are the #1 round fish species in the US now. We, as a council, conduct research on an ongoing basis directly, and we speak with non-seafood consumers and those who do eat seafood. And 2/3 of the seafood consumers we speak to include salmon in their diet on a regular basis. 67% of the consumers we survey annually retain salmon as an option in their diet. Now, when we talk to those consumers, we also ask multiple questions about considerations when consumers are buying salmon. And realize a lot of organizations conduct research, so our research is a little different. But what we find is the #1 factor the consumer thinks about when they are first approaching a salmon case or buying salmon online is price. So price, we know, is the leading factor when folks are about to make a purchase decision. It's common across multiple proteins, not unique to salmon. But then we hear the second variable is taste and flavor, followed by availability and nutrition. Now, there is a fifth category just behind nutrition called quality. And within that category of quality comes the idea of freshness, sustainability, the use of pharmacologicals, including antibiotics. So that piece does fit in. Now, the two consumption groups we look at are the non-seafood consumer, the person who's not currently eating seafood, and the person who is eating seafood. And what we find is as you build that seafood consumer in the United States, as they eat more and more of salmon, for example, they become much more aware of quality and sustainability, and that priority shifts. So at present, the moderate seafood consumer, the person who's not eating it or just starting to eat it, they do look at price, taste, flavor, availability, and nutrition as primary factors. So a lot of our messaging and the way we promote salmon in the US is built around those variables. We talk about quality, we talk about nutrition, we talk about sustainability, but we also talk about availability. One thing we don't talk about is price. For antitrust reasons, we leave that to our member companies, but we do talk about value, and we try to promote Chilean salmon as filling each of those variables as a quality choice. Recently, we've also seen data from our own research as well as from third-party sources. And this particular slide is from the Food Institute here in the US, of which we are a member. And they're conducting research through COVID, trying to determine the intentions of eaters and how this relates to salmon is pretty obvious. There are two categories here that the Food Marketing or the Food Institute has reported, and this is data collected and reported this past summer in July and August. And what's interesting is when we look at the preferences, I suppose, or the feelings of consumers. On the one hand, I just showed you some of the priorities people look at when buying seafood. But on the other hand, we look at how people feel when they eat. And for folks that are Generation Z and millennials, which are folks that are typically below 37 to 38 years old, so 38 years old and younger, those individuals are reporting that as you see below on this bottom blue line highlighted in yellow, 74% of them say they feel they've eaten well when there has been value. So this affirms what we say about price. The younger generation in the US is price sensitive, and that affects our product. At points, our product can be perceived as expensive, not at present, by the way. The second thing that population, the Gen Z community, is looking at, excuse me, is enjoyment. So pleasure, taste. And so that's where the taste piece is validated that I mentioned on the previous slide. So the Generation Z audience eating seafood is a little bit different than the boomer and mature, which are folks that are in their 50s and older. And you can see the boomer and mature is right-hand column, and it's shaded in green. And at the top, this group is looking at health and also moderation. So we see that boomer audience is the one that is prioritizing health and quality. They're very concerned about the wholesomeness of our fish, and that is the audience that's bringing to bear the question about pharmacologicals, antibiotics, and other things that are part of our farming process in some instances. So we have two audiences we're looking at: the fish eater, the non-fish eater, the people who do eat fish, Gen Z, and then boomers. Very different audiences, and the council has adapted to talking to these people. But one thing that we do see in the US is the salmon consumption is continuing to grow. Even with COVID, our imports are stable. We still see the US pulling in around 40,000 metric tons per month. We've lost a portion of food service, but we've gained at retail, and we are seeing a lot of new consumers adopting our product. The problem is this red line that you see here. The overall value of our imports to the US have plummeted, and I'll talk about those. So we do see growing consumption, growing imports, but the problem we're seeing is the value of what we're importing is dropping. From the National Restaurant Association, the loss of restaurants has already been mentioned, but this is the overall model. You'll be able to pull a copy of this. In April, we saw monthly sales drop from 65 billion to 30. They've recovered to around 55 billion, but we're still 10 billion below the peak number of 65 billion a month, which was occurring prior to COVID. Unfortunately, the restaurants we lost are in fact the ones that are higher end, and those are the ones that were typically selling salmon. On the bright side, the restaurants that have trimmed their menus and pulled back their operations because of COVID have kept salmon because it is a preferred species. So we see a drop in salmon. We see a drop in salmon sales, but we don't see enough to. We do see a drop in sales, but we haven't seen the recovery of the food service, at least through the end of this year. We're not projecting it to be positive. But the ultimate thing I want to share with you is here's our challenge in the US, and something all Chileans should realize. The market here in the US is pulling in tons of fish, but the price and price positioning we see in the US is unstable. Wholesale prices, due to the excess volume of fish arriving in the US, are the worst I've ever seen. And I grabbed one particular ad. This is running currently in the US, unprecedented. The retail price for salmon is $5.89 a pound. That's about $1 below tilapia. This is with a $2 weekly discount. It's an end of month promotion for National Seafood Month. So I think the future of the US looks bright, but the reality is the current situation price-wise is completely unsustainable. And the council is working very hard to address the issue. Our 10-member companies are pushing as hard as we can to facilitate price improvement, but it is an extreme challenge. The nice part, we see more and more people eating salmon, and we hope that those individuals will continue to prefer our salmon, because 6 out of 10 times the salmon they're eating is the salmon from all of you. So thank you very much. It's great to be with you.
Thank you, Jim, and great insights into the Chilean salmon sector. Now I'd like to introduce you to Sebastian, CEO of BluGlacier. Are you with me, Sebastian? Yes, here we are. Sebastian's held several sales roles in the seafood sector for the last several decades with companies like BioMar and Marl. BluGlacier, in collaboration with Ventuscares, were behind the Chilean coho salmon brand Silversides launch into the market, and also recently, only a week ago, a new value-added salmon brand from Chile called Ocean, with a definite clear value proposition on Chile. So we welcome you, Sebastian. I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hello, everybody. Well, yeah, we were invited to this webinar. Thank you, BioMar and Corbion, for including us and be part of this seminar. We're going to share a little bit of our experience on this this road of trying to introduce brands into the market. We've been selling salmon, as many of you guys, for many years in the United States, probably the largest market for everybody. As a commodity, and we have seen a lot of ups and downs in the market and the prices, and we are happy that the consumption is growing. But these scenarios are hard, and we've been trying to be a little bit innovative. And we started this road like 3-4 years ago with the development of Silverside. That is a brand with coho salmon, and we create a very interesting story. We were very well accepted on the retail. We're going to speak a little bit more, but what we see here is that we have to be very creative. We realized that it's hard to introduce a brand on the retail stores. The way our protein is offered to the consumer is in a counter that is not prepared in many cases to handle different brands. So it's hard to get close to the consumer. It's hard to pass the message and how to communicate. When we start with Silverside, we have few channels to be able to tell the story of Silverside and other salmon products. So we've been learning over the years, and we've been trying to get closer to the consumer. Silverside, as I said, we introduced a little bit more than 3 years ago. That is a coho brand that we fed with algae prime ingredient, with intention to reduce probably the lowest fish dependency ratio. We achieve a half kilo of marine ingredients to get a kilo of coho, and with the highest recognition and sustainability that are for our industry, the 4-star BAP, the ASC. And retailers really like the story. It was easy to get close to them. Everybody hear the story. Some of them like it, some of them grab it. But then we found that it was very hard to tell the story to the end consumer. We continue selling Silverside in the market. I think the acceptance of the product is very good. The item is a very high quality. It's very nice. The color is spectacular. The taste profile is very good. But again, it's the challenge continue to tell the story to the end consumer. And I think this is a big gap and a big mountain that we have to climb on this market when it's time to try to get a little bit aside of the commodity business that we are immersed these days. So as a BluGlacier, we decided to continue on this effort to create a brand. When we introduced Silverside to the market, we didn't have a marketing department, so we were making this with our own efforts of people being in the commodity business for several years. So we decided to hire a chief marketing officer, Evelyn Torres, that is coming from the direct-to-consumer world, not even close to seafood. And so we rebrand BluGlacier. We define 3 pillars that are driving our new approach to the market, that is trying to get a little bit out of only being a salmon producer and offering this product only like that. We define wellness, innovation, and transparency as our pillars of the new brand. We are super proud of produce our salmon on the ocean. So ocean race, ocean love is part of our identity as an office, as a BluGlacier. And on this shift of the marketing strategy, we were thinking on probably in 2-3 years to start exploring the direct-to-consumer area. But COVID, I think, has boosted and accelerated a little bit this approach. And so we wanted to take this wave and trying to surf on it. So we have working very hard over the last 6 months to launch our direct-to-consumer brand, that is Ocean, that we officially launched it a few days ago, and we expected to start selling next week this product. That is basically a high-end fresh product that is gonna be offered only through our website, so people will buy online. And so the idea is to offer a super fresh product that is not available on everywhere, so people will experience a high-end product that's gonna be delivered everywhere in the United States. And the idea is also to open channels where we can really listen to what our customer wants. We believe that having a direct communication with the consumer will teach us what they wanted. We know that we don't know if the product we define and the approach we are having is the perfect one, but I think it's gonna open the channel for us to listen to our consumers, to understand what they look for, and hopefully they can prefer this extremely fresh, high quality product that we will offer online for them. This is very exciting experience, and having the possibility to pack the product in the States and prepare this will allow us to get to the consumer house with a very, very fresh product. So this is a little bit our experience, and yeah, it's super new for us. So we are all excited about how this is gonna happen. So yeah, this is pretty much everything.
Thank you, Sebastian. That's very exciting. We love to see brands coming into the market. Any branding helps to remove the decommoditize the marketplace. So we wish you all the best with your new launch on Ocean. Okay.
Thank you.
So we're going to start the question component of this section. Just get to. Okay. So I'll start with a couple of pre-prepared questions that I have for people. I'd like to showcase this book, Food for a Better Future, written by Sharon Natoli. And in that book, she states that as future generations will increasingly rely on the food system that respects the planet while nourishing the people it serves. Those in the business of food have a great responsibility to get it right. And she is a renowned dietitian and nutritionist. And in her book, she explores the evolution of the definition of healthy foods. That we are moving from being very nutrient focused to delivering on, which only delivers on functional benefits, to move more into our own mental and social well-being. In that way, she identifies 6 emerging trends, and one of them being social and mental. Seafood in itself and salmon has very well known in the marketplace for its omega-3s and being heart health, but the consumer is demanding a little bit more to the story. They want to be able to do more than just sustain their bodies. They're looking for stories to share in their social communities, to share at their table, and also to identify with on a personal basis. In that way, I wanted to throw a question out to you, Arlin, to start the conversation. So how can seafood brands decommoditize themselves and find their own brand story to address this emerging need?
So you packed a lot into that question, and it's not one answer, sorry. For the decommoditization, and I think, we saw that the volume and value of Chilean salmon are diverging in the wrong directions. We think that decommoditization comes from making Chilean salmon preferred and seen as distinct from other farm sources because it comes from Chile. And the things that are most unique in the American marketplace and immediately recognized are culinary. The flavors of how salmon and other fish and seafood are prepared in Chile, and creating ways for those to be easily understood and replicated by the home cook. Again, we think that cured, chilled, and smoked are the best opportunities here, given how we're eating over the next year or so. On the issue of Sharon Natoli's book and the issue of health and wellness, we do see the consumer understanding health and wellness as even more important, including immunity boosting benefits that Linda referred to, than ever before. And this ought to help drive fish and seafood consumption. For all foods, and especially all animal proteins, we see the consumer is now thinking about healthy as a more expansive view that includes antibiotic use, microplastics, and other ways that eating connects them to the good and bad in the world. And so one of the challenges for the seafood industry is to break out of an old model where there's some fish that is better than other fish. And again, as several of the speakers addressed, talk about why fish or salmon is a better choice than other proteins like beef, pork, and chicken. That's the real key to climbing up the value ladder while also increasing volume. For the decommoditization, though, making salmon better just makes salmon better. Making salmon a Chilean product that is distinct from salmon from other places is how value is how value is unlocked, and it's no longer a commodity where lowest price or most available source trumps all other concerns.
I'd like to invite the other guests, panelists, to come on to the screen and weigh in on that question. Linda?
Yeah, I would agree with Arlin. These days, the value of fish and seafood continues to increase in consumers' minds, and that's definitely due to the new focus on healthy. Healthy is no longer a bad word. It's something that consumers are seeking. And so, when we look at seafood, we definitely need to start using the language that seafood is better for our planet overall when we look at overall protein options. And salmon has a healthy halo with consumers. And so I would encourage, all of us to continue to produce salmon that meets that nutritional promise that consumers have come to demand.
Thank you. Anyone else with any thoughts? Okay, I'll move on to the next question. Great. Okay. Well, seafood has a good story, and over the last few decades, the aquaculture industry has been on a journey, reviewing our relationship with forage fish and also with our oceans. We have implemented responsible farming practices and standards like ASC and BAP. We've also reduced our dependency on foraged fish by changing feed recipes. Back in the 90s, our feed recipes were 80% made up of marine ingredients, and today they represent a much smaller component, including and primarily plant-based raw materials. So, Jim, I wanted to throw this question out to you. Sustainability is a continuous journey, and some might argue that delivering sustainable nutrition is a never-ending story. Standards like ASC are continuing to raise the bar further, and we see sustainable feed options like microalgae, the alga prime from Corbion, out there, and other novel ingredients like insect meal and so forth entering the innovation pipeline. How can the aquaculture industry talk about all the great positive achievements we have done while also allowing the sustainability journey to continue?
This is a great question. And for us, as we engage the U.S. public and continue to have conversations, give you a quick bit of context. We've had over 250 million impressions this year, almost 150 million engagements beyond impressions. I won't get into all of the detail, but we've generated tens of thousands of followers across social media and used those channels to remarket and engage and discuss issues of sustainability and seafood in particular. Here's the challenge. In Chile, we're improving so much so fast that consumers and even retailers, those are professional buyers at retail, can't keep up. So to answer your question, we have to continue to tell our story. Now, we also have a long way to go to get to where the US consumer expects us to be, particularly with pharmacologicals. But we have made so much progress in the last 3 years. The industry has changed so dramatically that unfortunately some people still think of Chile and the way we farm fish in Chilean aquaculture from the perspective of even as far back as 2015 or earlier. I think the industry is far improved, and in particular, the way we raise our fish, our aquaculture practices, and even with regard to feed conversion, we've made incredible strides. But yet when I'm out in the marketplace talking about salmon, many times folks bring up data from prior to 2015, and even some data that's prior to 2010. So we need to keep telling our story, and we need to keep celebrating even global aquaculture. Many other countries have made similar improvements. I look forward to our future. I think we're heading in the right direction, but I will agree we have a long way to go. But we have to keep educating people and telling our story. We've got
a question from the audience, and I want to throw that out to you, Sebastian. The question is, do you think that the market can value how our product is fed or produced in relation to sustainable feeds and the inclusion of algae and marine ingredients? Do you think that they will classify this as a valued product and hence pay a premium?
Well, we think that I think the answer is yes. I think there's some people in the big spectrum of consumer that value that. We know that all farm salmon or farm species is fed with something. So the ingredients are important for sure. And as you mentioned, has been a trend over the years to reduce the dependency of marine ingredients. And I think with the growth of aquaculture that we are seeing, and we're going to continue seeing, the utilization of new ingredients that can be also farmed, as the algae ingredients and some insect meal, as you mentioned too. Those are farm ingredient for farm species of seafood. So I think it's important to have alternative, because we all know that the oceans are limited on providing resources to be part of the ingredient. So, but going back to the appreciation on the consumer side, we believe that it's a group of consumers that is aware of that, and probably is willing to pay a premium, knowing that the ingredients on the feed are sustainable or impact less the pressure over the marine resources or any other characteristic that they can appreciate it. I think and especially on this market where it's more than 300 million people, there's people who will value that characteristic.
Fantastic. Okay, I'll go on to my next question. Here we go. So we've seen in 2020, it has been dubbed the year of the conscious consumer, as people put their own health alongside of the health of the planet. In a survey conducted last year by Filterra, 88% of recipients from the UK and the US said that they wanted brands to help them be more environmentally friendly and ethical in their daily lives. We see this now, the rise of the conscious consumer. Their consumption habits are guided by the product, how the product was produced, where it was sourced from, and the ingredients used in it. We're just going to show you a little bit of a video right now. And this video shows you that we have seen some movement in the marketplace for towards a planet diet. Very interesting video that we just saw there from WWF, Planet Diets. And we can see from going into the menu planner that seafood features very well in their diet plans. So we can see that there's been some movement towards positive environmental impacts about seafood. And I think this takes us to a nice, interesting spot for what the possibilities and opportunities can be for the salmon world. And at BioMar, we like this ad that we've created that we wanted to share with you and finish up on today. Your red meat just got pink, and our copy would be, salmon and trout have the lowest carbon footprint of all protein dishes. What's more, you won't find a more nutritious and delicious food source. By choosing a different color when reaching for meat in the supermarket, you support your planet one bite at a time. So we hope that we've inspired you today with all of this webinar and showing of what is possible in the US market and towards consumers. And we hope that you can take these back into your own businesses. If you need more information, our team is ready and willing to support you. In Corbion, we have Paula and Chris that you're happy to reach out to. Also, Michael and Oscar are there from BioMar to support you. So I'd like to thank our media partners, SalmonExpert, for promoting us today. I'd also like to send a special thank you to Jean-Paul, who's behind the scenes managing the webinar today. Couldn't have done it without you. And of course to BioMar and Corbion for bringing all these great influences to this webinar and being able to show our message. So we hope that you've enjoyed the session, and we will see you in a better, safer conditions. Stay safe out there. Bye.
Food is everything to me. It's how I think. It's why I create. To me, food is family. I'm Sammy Mansour. I'm a third-generation chef.
The fat boy right there now.
Sustainability is the moral compass of my career. The world is going to increase by 2.5 billion humans in the next 20 years. There are mouths to feed. So obviously, we can look to aquaculture, but we've got to do it right. I truly want to master understanding how you can create a great farm for salmon, because I think that that's kind of the key to feeding the world. Come 6,000 miles from my restaurant in downtown Los Angeles to southern Chile to find out if what they're doing might be the most innovative and sustainable salmon farming in the world.
This is the hatchery. This is the first step for the full process of the salmon.
And this is water that's running in the streams outside, and it originates as glacier water?
Yes, correct.
So can I drink this?
Yes, of course.
I want to keep drinking it.
And this tank is between 50 to 60,000.
That's a lot of fish.
A lot of fish.
And then how many tanks are in this room right now?
52.
So there's this like 5,000 square foot facility on land that's going to raise and harvest essentially the starting process of what's going to be 37 million pounds of salmon for humans to eat. I'd say that's one hell of a sustainable way to manage your land in terms of feeding the planet.
This area where we are right now, we are about 320 feet deep, and the pens go down 65 feet. This is very important for the salmon farming, to have deep areas so it helps with the cleanliness.
I think that that's a really big concern for a lot of people. You have millions of salmon, and there's two things that's going into the water. Their waste and then food they don't eat.
The densities are very well measured, and there's a big separation between the farms. And in terms of controlling the waste of food, we have underwater cameras at different levels. So when we start to notice 1 or 2 pellets going through, we stop immediately feeding. So it's really controlled to minimize the impact.
This is it. This is the food coming out. This is why I came here, to come to the salmon farm. This is so cool.
Yeah, you
see that guy that just jumped up?
Very happy.
I mean, he looks like the fish that we were just cutting up a few days ago in Los Angeles. I mean, you want to talk about connecting with your food at the source? This is so cool. In the past, it's taken 2 to 3 pounds of pelagic fish in the meal to raise 1 pound of farm-raised salmon. So what's your fish into fish out ratio, and what's in that feed?
Well, specifically on this salmon that we are seeing here, we include algae, meal, and oil that provide the omega-3 we need for the salmon farming. So we use half a pound of wild catch fish to produce 1 pound of farmed salmon.
That's amazing.
It's amazing, and the fish is performing well.
Today, in our feeds, we are using alga prime, which is a microalgae that supplies DHA, one of the most important marine omega-3s that fish will need and humans will need as well.
The omega-3's point of origin in the ocean is algae. The small fish eat the algae. It goes up the food chain until the salmon get their omegas. So essentially, you're replacing the middle fish with the alga prime to get those omega-3s.
Yes.
Using less wild fish to make the meal.
Exactly.
Coho is my favorite salmon, one of my favorite fish, and the silver side is like amazing. It's buttery, it's rich, it's well marbled, it melts in your mouth. And I'm just curious, does the alga prime have a role in that?
Alga prime is part of the oil that we are using in that diet, and oil has a huge impact on flesh quality.
So just like humans, salmon the same thing, right? We are what we eat?
Definitely, yes.
We are absolutely convinced that the companies that are going to be successful in the future is because they are responsible in their production. It starts from the very beginning, in the hatcheries that we are working, and also in the feed. And that is why we went to the algae prime.
Wow, wow. Okay. Salmon. Wow. You're a superstar, Salmon. What I've learned in Chile is that not all farm salmon are created equally. The water's got to be clean, the fish have to be healthy, and the feed matters.